Good evening and welcome to this edition of the program. Tonight, our program will be in two parts. We have an expert who is going to talk to us about the oil industry. You know that all of us have been quite worried about how Ghana's oil industry is faring. Here's an expert who has studied what we could be doing and has some warning signals for us based on research of other countries. So we'll talk to her about that. And then you remember a few weeks ago, I should say, there was the big sanitation conference at the British Council, which brought together the Jospon group of companies and Joy FM's Manasseh Azuri Awuni, who had been investigating them for a while. This was on an Imani platform, and everything was said. We have filmed all that and edited it into the most useful parts. You should hear Manasseh talk directly to the Jospon group of companies and what their response was. Also participating in this was the mayor of Accra, who was there himself, and the minister for sanitation. Editing has put together a beautiful program that will make you feel that you were actually at the event. So that's the second part of the program. So first, let's go to our expert on oil, and then we listen to what the sanitation experts had to say. Manasseh Azuri and the Jospon group of companies. Welcome to this segment of the program, and we are talking to Dr. Hepzibah Egede, whom you may have heard on radio or you've seen on television in Ghana. She's in Ghana to do a workshop, and her expertise is to warn African countries, or if you like, southern countries, of how oil exploration can affect the economy negatively. She knows a lot about what has happened in Nigeria, and she's here also to give a warning to Ghana as well. Good evening, and thank you for your time.
Thank you for having me.
So tell us about your expertise. What are your actual expertise?
My name is Dr. Hepzibah Egede. I work at the University of Buckingham in the United Kingdom. So I am a senior lecturer in law. I'm also the co-director of the Center for Extractive Energy Studies at the university. So quite a bit of our focus is on extractive energy, but we also look at renewable energy also, especially from the context of environmental protection.
I think extractive is more interesting in terms of economics than renewable for us in Africa at this time.
Well, renewable also, it does have quite a lot of commercial opportunities, because especially when you're looking at maybe things to do with solar energy, for example, and that's the project that has brought us to Ghana, in terms of how can you open up renewable energy opportunities at the microeconomic level and also in terms of for SMEs. So it does offer quite a bit of opportunities to a wider sector of the economy.
The critical point we want to find out about, though, is you seem to have a warning for countries that have discovered oil, like Ghana, ahead of discovering the oil, or how that oil industry is going to play out. We know, for instance, in Nigeria, that the oil industry undermined the agric industry. It brought up corruption, etc., etc. What are the principal warnings that you will give to a country like Ghana, which is a new oil exporting country?
That's a very good question, especially when you come to the first thing you mentioned in terms of the undermining of the agricultural sector. That's what we can describe basically as the Dutch disease, and that's drawing lessons from the early experience of Netherlands when they had the discovery of oil. Now, when we look at the Dutch disease basically focuses on where you have a sector that attracts quite a bit of foreign direct investment. Obviously, that may have a detriment on other sectors of the economy, for example, like agriculture that you have mentioned, and also the manufacturing sector. So in terms of maybe a lesson that Ghana can learn is just trying to see how you can minimize basically the Dutch disease from creeping up as an output of basically the new reserves that you have discovered. And I know that there have been some questions about the Ghanaian experience on the Dutch disease. And one of the ways to combat that really would be to ensure that the other sectors of the economy are not impacted, especially agriculture, which is obviously key also to Ghana.
Let's explain the Dutch disease in some greater detail for people who are hearing it for the first time. So it is the phenomenon where, because you've discovered oil, you have a lot of foreign direct investment coming into your country.
Yes.
Does it occasion a neglect of the agriculture industry, or it has to do with the currency parity, which means that your local currency is going to be stronger, and therefore your exports are going to be more expensive?
Yes, the exports become more expensive, but the Dutch disease also could have an impact also on agriculture, in the sense that once the focus is on just quick money, so to speak, or quick foreign direct investment, then the government may not have that much of an incentive to prioritize other sectors, for example, the agricultural sector, and that has been an experience in countries like Nigeria.
So what warning will you give to Ghana?
that comes back again to what we call good energy governance, and that's still part of one of the goals of sustainable development. So most of the time when we talk about sustainable development, we're looking towards the future. How do we meet the needs of future generations? But sustainable development has another pillar, and that deals with the present needs of the present generation. So one of the things I would suggest is basically in terms of ensuring that Ghana gets the governance system in a very equitable manner, and that would help basically in terms of trying to minimize the Dutch disease.
What are the key elements that must be in this governance system?
In the governance system, 3 things. First, you want to sort of involve the people more in the decision-making process.
Who are the people?
The people, and that's the Ghanaian people. So
Parliament?
Not just Parliament, talking about also the citizens in Ghana. And so one of the key things, I don't know whether you've heard basically of the Extractive Energy Transparency Initiative. So what the Extractive Energy Transparency Initiative does basically is to basically ensure that there's more transparency in terms of how the revenue that is derived from oil and gas or other extractive energies are basically sort of managed and utilized.
So involving the people, getting reps to, what input should the people make? Whether you are drilling a well, I mean, if we're going to go to real details, there's drilling a well, there's the upstream and downstream.
Yes,
so what
there are 3 streams actually.
Yeah, there's
so
midstream?
Yes, there is midstream. Most of the time, lots of people just focus on the upstream and the downstream. But the midstream basically deals with the storage of resources and also in terms of the transport of resources. But I suppose where it would have quite a bit of impact is when you're dealing with the upstream sector. Now, I am actually aware that Ghana, most of your reserves are more of offshore. So you may not have a challenge like Nigeria or other countries where basically there may be some community tension, since most of your reserves basically are more to do with offshore exploitation. But how do you get the people involved?
So offshore means under the water?
Offshore means basically, yes,
and
in
then
terms of when you're
on ground.
Yes, on ground.
You're making the case
so
that Nigeria
in terms of land, when we deal with onshore, you're dealing with in terms of land exploitation, and then when you talk about offshore, basically you're looking at in terms of
marine,
shallow water or deep water exploration.
And that's marine exploitation.
Yes,
people don't live on
marine
water,
exploitation.
so
yes.
it doesn't create a conflict of space.
No, it doesn't create a conflict of space in terms of community conflicts. But of course, you may have challenges also in terms of how do you safeguard basically the fields from maybe community tensions, like obviously piracy.
Piracy, okay.
Yes.
So the problem of Nigeria, the age-old historical problem of Ogoni land, is not one of those that we should be worried about.
Well,
because we are offshore.
It could be a challenge in the sense of, again, looking at your legal framework. Who should basically have control over resources? Obviously, for most African countries, control over resources would lie basically with the states. So talking about sovereignty over natural resources. So with most African countries, Ghana, Nigeria, Angola, the states basically would hold the resources on behalf of the people. So that has been a bit of a dilemma, for example, with the Niger Delta, where obviously the communities want to have more of a say in terms of how the resources are utilized, especially not just for the benefit of the larger sections of Nigeria, for example, but let's start from the Niger Delta itself, where the oil is exploited. So again, coming back to public participation in the decision-making process, how do we sort of ensure that maybe the contracts, for example, the people actually have a stake in terms of how those contracts are transacted? And that's a very difficult challenge. It would mean a complete overhaul, for example, of the constitutional framework, which obviously may not be feasible in the near future.
Are the people seized with the requisite skill to look at the contracts? In Ghana, what we do is that these contracts go to Parliament, and Parliament sits as a whole and also has a select committee on mines and energy, which will look at these contracts. There is also an energy commission, which is a government body, which has some role to play. And there's a petroleum commission, which is the regulator of the entire industry. And then there's the Ghana National Petroleum Corporation, a GNPC, which is a stakeholder and holds the carried interest for the government. So with all of these bodies, you still talk about the people. Are
Well,
the people not sufficiently represented in Parliament, at the Parliamentary Committee, at the Energy Commission, at the Petroleum Commission, at the GNPC?
That is true. I mean, that's one way of, in terms of democratic representation. But then again, I suppose the people could be represented by maybe non-governmental organizations, so maybe civil societies. So civil societies that are well abreast or conversant with what is required in terms of resource governance. So I did mention, I think somebody else was asking me this question. For example, access to information. How much access of information do the people have in terms of how contracts are negotiated? And so one of the ways to empower people basically is providing more access to the information of contracts. And there's an interesting public domain website which is called the Resource Governance Institute, which tries to help in terms of capacity building for civil societies that represent the different communities that have where the oil and gas is actually exploited.
I see.
Yeah.
Well, in terms of information...
So more access to information is quite helpful in terms of resource
Ghana
governance.
is about to pass a Freedom of Information Bill. It is now in Parliament, and hopefully it will be passed before 2020. Will that satisfy the requirements of the transparency leg relating to information?
It's a very good start. And also, again, drawing from Nigeria, Nigeria also has a Freedom of Information Act. And the whole issue, again, is to enable people to access information in terms of more freely. But I suppose the key question would be in terms of the actual enforcement of the regulatory framework, and that tends to be always a sort of dilemma, really, when you look at the black text way of regulating law.
Is there any jurisdiction where this has worked perfectly?
Well, I mean, Norway...
In terms of the oil good governance in petroleum?
Well, Norway is always sort of held as a very good model in terms of good resource governance. Canada is also a very interesting jurisdiction. And the reason why Canada is probably quite interesting is that you don't just have state ownership of resources and private ownership of resources. Canada also recognizes that there could also be community ownership in certain provinces of Canada. So I think it's probably something that maybe there are lessons that we could learn in Africa. But as I said, it always comes down to the type of constitution we have. And our constitutions basically in Africa focus on public ownership of resources. So in other words, we look at the state, the actual states, acting as the custodian of natural resources. But sometimes, again, how do you basically translate those benefits to the actual people? And that's the dilemma that most African states face, and also other regions in the developing world.
I see. Excellent. So looking ahead 10 years from now, with all the work that you're doing, what do you anticipate will be the landscape in say, West Africa with the
well, we hope that there could be more indigenous ownership of resources. So we hope that the market can become more diversified. So not just focusing on the big oil majors, but hoping to see that we could have more indigenous companies arising in terms of the market. And I think Nigeria basically is doing quite a good job on that. You have more companies being involved, more indigenous companies being involved in what we call the marginal fields. And maybe that's something also that Ghana can learn. It's a good lesson. Yes.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Dr. Gede. We'll be following up with you to find out and update us how all the countries are doing as you proceed with your research. We're happy that a West African woman has dedicated her thesis and her academic life to this, and we congratulate you for that.
Thank you very much.
That was Dr. Heziba Ngede from the University of Buckingham in the United Kingdom.
So, do you want ZOOMLION to come and tell you throwing rubbish out of your vehicle can cause serious accident? So, do you want ZOOMLION to come and tell you that improper management of waste can cause cholera? So, you want ZOOMLION to come and tell you to stop sweeping this rubbish into the gutter? And when once you do this, the gutter will choke.
You remember 2011, people died because of flood. You remember?
All because the gutters are not free. So you're waiting for ZOOMLION to come and tell you to stop dumping refuse inside the gutter. Stop dumping refuse inside the gutter. I am shouting. Stop it!
This public service announcement was brought to you by ZOOMLION. ZOOMLION, helping keep Africa clean.
So at this point, it's my pleasure to invite the Honorable Joseph Kofi Ada, the Minister of Sanitation, to please take his seat up here. And also to invite Mr. Mohammed Ajesowa, please come up, the Mayor of Accra. This is the man in charge of all the baller. So Ghana beyond baller. And then we have Mr. Joseph Sian Ejapon, Chairman of ESPA and ZOOMLION, also here. And then Mr. Manasseh Azure Awini, an investigative journalist with Joy FM. He's also here. So that's my full panel. I will be there moderating, but the rest of you are part of this discussion. I'm told that the Embassy of Benin is here, the Danish Embassy is here, and members of Parliament and Parliament also represented here. We have also Mr. Andrew Barnes, the Australian High Commissioner here. You're all welcome. So my comments are simple. Ghana's sanitation strategy has failed because our leaders have failed. They failed at the simple task of cleaning this country. It has not been because of the lack of funds. It has not been because of the lack of expertise. It's simply been because of corruption, mismanagement, just plain incompetence at managing this issue. We've thrown millions of dollars at this problem, and we are still sinking in filth. We are not a people incapable of the intellectual wherewithal to deal with sanitation. And we have teeming youth and all kinds of people we can apply to this problem. We have in this country a multinational built on sanitation. I don't see why we can't clean this country. We are not hearing clearly what ideas we have, and we need to understand them now and start working towards them, because we see all kinds of things thrown up. Today, please explain these things for us. On this note, therefore, on the order as it is, I'd like to invite the participants to give us their remarks, and after the remarks, we would have our discussion and make our notes. Azure, for the record, you reported that we have thousands, possibly, of dustbins that we haven't distributed.
That
saw
is
the pictures.
Across the country.
Yes.
Yes, and there are some districts that they have said they don't need the dustbins at all.
How can they not need dustbins when they have households?
Okay, let me explain. If you go to the rural areas, and when I was even living at Zone 6, he spoke about, I had a very small container and we had a communal container, so anytime it was full, I had to go in and dump it in a communal container. These are 240-liter dustbins. So the ordinary household in the rural area, which does not generate waste.
So it's too big for them.
It's too big for them, so they are using it to store water.
Hold on that. Now, Mr. Minister, can we redeploy the dustbins? By the way, Azure, we've paid for those dustbins.
Those that are the assemblies across the country, we've paid for all of them.
So, Mr. Minister, can we redeploy them into the cities where we need these dustbins?
First of all, we need the dustbins. Secondly, it was 1 million dustbins that were supposed to have been procured. There's controversy over how they were procured. So that's what's held back their distribution. Until that's cleared up, and you go ahead and distribute it, then you owe whoever supplied them.
Quickly, what controversy is it that takes so long to resolve?
The procurement process. To the best of my understanding, the local government minister was supposed to authorize this procurement. Apparently, the local government minister at the time refused to sanction the procurement, and then orders were given from above as was reported. And so everything got stuck. That's as far as I know.
So why don't you unstick it?
I'm sorry?
Unstick it. I mean, get the dustbins out there, let them be distributed, and let's pay for them.
As a new ministry, we are trying to streamline all these things. The contract
It's taking too long. Oh.
Now,
That's what
the problem with this contract, Kofi, the problem with this contract goes back to the same issue I mentioned. It has to do with corruption. But the investigation Joy FM did, that contract has been bloated by at least 130 million Ghana cedis. Okay?
Continue.
That is it. And the CID has stepped in and they are investigating this particular one.
Thank you on that, because here's my point. Please, Mr. Minister, I beg you, listen. Assuming without admitting that what he's saying is true, okay, why don't you ring fence that problem, let the CID deal with it, and go distribute the dustbins?
Before the CID has reported on that?
Well,
so it's a judicial matter now.
No.
Yes.
Point is this. He says it's an overbloat. Listen, if it gets to a debt,
the CID has not finished
you just hear me a bit.
They've not reported.
I beg.
How do I go grabbing them and distributing them?
Hear me a bit. Listen, we don't have the luxury to behave as if we are in a very cool situation. We have a crisis on our hands. Now, if we have gone to buy overpriced dustbins and there is some issue on it, let the CID deal with whatever is a criminal issue.
Which is what they're doing.
Well, but I'm saying, in the meantime, why do you leave the dustbin sitting there rotting?
No, there are two things. Let me just explain,
at the
please.
price?
There are two things. The overbloated one has not been supplied yet. That's 1 million dustbins. But even before that overbloated contract was awarded, previous dustbins
have not been supplied.
They were procured, supplied, and we went across the country, and you find thousands of them locked up in assemblies.
Yeah, I've seen it.
Some have told us they don't even need it.
Okay.
So if you are talking about going ahead to distribute, what I think the ministry can do is to ask or recall those dustbins from the assemblies that do not have need for them so that they distribute them.
Okay. Because of time, we'll move on to the next speaker, and I think the discussion will get to more issues. So it's my time now. It's my privilege to invite Mr. Sierra Japon to give us his presentation.
Okay, thank you very much. Good morning. I'll humbly like to stand because I want to show some slides. Sanitation is practical. When you have a problem in business, you look at what do you have, how to get where you want to be, and then you try to resolve it. So I humbly want us to look at, as a country, we have a challenge in sanitation or waste management. What are the resources available? What can we do? What has been done before which has failed, and the way forward? So Ghana, we have a national sanitation strategy. It's printed in millions. It was first printed in 1999, revised in 2010. DFID, the donors supported. And this plan spells out every roadmap to arrest the sanitation. And other developed countries in the whole world, viewers and listeners, it is by strategy you can arrest. When you want to play a football, the coach has a strategy. And through that strategy, a world football match is being played. If you want to build a house, you have an architect who draw the plans, and from the plans, the civil engineers, the builders are built on. This is Ghana's environmental sanitation policy strategy. And let's look at each of the pages, what has been done and what has not been done. I think if we follow this, that is where we can go now. So we have all the guidelines. We have the national environmental strategy. We have the district. We have everything there. Rural waste, rural sanitation model, household water. These are all the laws, the criminal offenses, legal and framework, everything that a country must have. The institutions, Ministry of Environment, Ministry of Health, Ministry of Local Government have to get. It is already there. These are the areas, the list of components that have to go through, whether it is distilling of the drains, cleaning of the drains, cemeteries, disposal of dead body, everything, whether it is even pollution of the air, everything, Ghana, we have it. The ministries and the agencies is already there. So, the private sector in the policy, page 26, it says that the bulk of the environmental sanitation services shall be provided by the private sector. Is it there? Is the private sector there? then we are complementing and then complying with the strategy. I believe that if anybody is talking out of this strategy, then it's not doing well. Then meaning that this strategy, it doesn't work for we to spend money, for the donors to support us and develop us, and to also have a best institution strategy and best practice.
I don't mean to cut you, but our position is that this strategy has failed.
Okay.
That's why we are in the mess.
Kofi, I'm trying to humbly explain to you. I'm talking on the part of the private sector, what we have done. If it has failed, you will see what we have done, and then that's why I'm giving you the pages. I also brought the book here. Then you compare those where we have failed and what, because we are trying to find solutions. Where they have failed, we fill in the gaps, and then we move forward. So, it says that based under the supervision of public sector, especially the metropolitan, municipal, and district assemblies. So this is the policy. And is it done? The private sector, most of all the private companies are in the districts, are in the municipals, and we are working. So on the private sector part, we have complied with the strategy and we are working. The next one says that by the year 2010, 75% of the services in sanitation must be done by the private sector. In the year 2015, 90%. So when the issue comes that let us go back to the public sector, meaning that it's a diffusion of the strategy. The strategy says that it should go to the private sector. The private sector must be empowered, must be supported. And so this book and all this policy must be done. It says minimum targets of collection and transporting by private operators in all the district capitals through franchise or contracting. And then in the year 2020, it should be 100%. So I'm not of the student that let us go back to the public sector. Let us give it to the public sector. The policy says it must go to the private sector. The private sector needs to be supported, needs to be encouraged. When you are contracting loans from the public sector, give it to the private sector. The public sector shouldn't go and take loans and now manage it on itself. It should give it to the private companies for them to work. That is the policy. I humbly want to place on record. Sometimes, because of certain happenings, human beings tend to forget the past. In the year 2008, when Ghana was hosting the African Cup of Nations, ZOOMLION emerged in the year 2006 with Tricycles. That was the knowledge. We partnered other private companies. We cleaned the stadium all. It was very fresh and new. We just have to go to Germany, learn from their practice. And then we came and we performed highly that everyone was commending. We were sustaining it. We brought in flowers from Kenya. We did everything everywhere. And it was going. The youth employment program, in the book of the youth employment, that's the National Youth Employment Program, they were going to use donkey carts and other things, wheelbarrows. It was ZOOMLION's innovation that brought tricycles. And today, the tricycle have revolutionized to motorized tricycle that we have about 3,000. So I think the private sector has done very, very well. That need to be commended and supported. And I think that they have brought a lot of revolutionary in the waste management sector because it was not existent.
Okay.
These are daily cleansing and everything. When you go to the UK, they are cleaning streets every day. You go to other countries, it is normal. You must clean the public areas and other things every day. These are the services. It's normal works that we do. These are all the things that the medians, you could see from early morning, the street of Accra is always neat. In the afternoon when the hawkers come. And that is it. I have been to Dubai. They clean at dawn. And nobody litters there. So one week, you see the thing. It is different from here. It's different from here. So no matter how the private sector does the work, you might think that is it. I've been to China. They clean every day. It was China that we brought this concept. It's there. Now, policy on the private sector involvement. On page, in the National Sanitation Policy, they are to support to produce machines, equipment, and tools. What ZOOMLION did was we brought in a manufacturer to come and manufacture waste equipment. Kofi, we brought in the year 2007, almost of the equipment here, We manufacture them here. We have partners.
You manufacture, you assemble here.
We assemble them here.
Okay.
We are manufactured tricycles, but we have a semi-knockdown assemble plant that does with the waste equipment. If we are to be supported, and the private sector is to be supported, we will get far. I'm saying that with this policy, the private sector is complementing and complying the policy, so that it can have we can have a fruitful country. These are equipments. We have about 5,000 tricycles, more than 2,000 trucks. And we have an arrangement with companies. For capacity, the private sector has enough capacity to deliver. I boldly want to say that there's nothing that is different from discharging waste. Some of the trucks are even parked new, waiting for services to be worked on. Now, policy on sanitary disposal of health care and hazardous waste is there. Page 17 is there. What has been done? This is what medical waste disposal was a challenge in this country. And when we go to pick the waste from the hospitals and clinics, the solid waste and the medical waste, human parts, are all boxed together. What we did was to bring in, and these are the hospital facilities we have in Ghana, 3,217. Only 33 has incinerators. So the 2,000 over, no incinerators. What we did was to bring in an autoclave. What we are fulfilling the policy and the strategy. So all the infrastructure that have to deal with waste in this country, the private sector have put in place. The only thing is enforcement and the necessary support to be given to the private sector, not to duplicate efforts. The duplication of efforts makes it, we go back and we go forward, and then it seems like nothing is happening, but a lot of things have really happened. I was looking at the funding that we have received from donors for the past 3 years, 2011. This is a statement from government, 2011 to 2014. It's about 1 billion that we received from donors into supporting of the sanitation and the wash sector. And we were looking at how much has been invested into the private sector. This is just 3 years. So when you have a 10 years that the private sector have taken 1 billion cedis, this is 3 years, which is $1 billion. So you can see the private sector has inadequate funding. You buy your own truck, you wait for money to be paid, and so many challenges that the private sector, but still, the private sector is working. In developed countries where other colleagues that we visit, you have a loan term to be paid over 7 years and 10 years. Ladies and gentlemen, we have the best universities in the world in this country. Legon is there, KNUST is there. These are research institutes which are helping in environmental engineering. We can learn from them. And so with them, we saw that the composition of our waste, 61% was organic. And out of this 61%, what we have to do is to comply go into the policy. And the policy talks about provision of management, waste treatment, and recycling disposal. So we just went into the compost plant, fulfilling the policy strategy. So if we work with the strategy and we continue, we will deal with the solutions. I humbly want to place on record that most of the infrastructure with dealing and solving the problems, the private sector have done it. And this is the compost plant. We are able to produce about 2,000 bags of compost that could have been thrown away, or the landfill could not produce. So we should have more of compost plant. The compost plant in Accra is 160 acre land. 30 acres has been used. So Kofi, we have another 130. If Tema is getting full,
you brought me in. Hold on. Are you saying this compost plant is in Accra?
It's at Aji Kotoku here.
Are you aware? It says how many? What's the size?
Please, the size is 130 acre land. And
hold on. Are we using it?
We are using it.
So why do we have a problem with landfill and waste disposal?
Let me explain here, please. Part of the vehicles go to Teba, and part of the vehicles come to Ajin Kotoku. Ajin Kotoku processes 600 tons daily. Accra generates 3,000 tons. So the rest, that is where it goes to.
Is that the maximum capacity of this place?
Yes, please.
600.
600 tons.
And you get all
the waste. It comes there every day.
I mean, you get your 600 tons to
Yes,
process
please.
every day.
Yes, please.
So the capacity is full.
It's full. Okay. So what we have done is that we are expanding this to 2,800 because the land is 160-acre land and it's only 30 have been used.
Wait.
Kofi, with government support to expand this, we don't need any landfill. We can process the compost plant and move on.
Okay, hold on. I need to nail it. So we get. Okay, Mr. Mayor and Mr. Minister, are you saying, because landfills became an issue, I beg you, landfills became an issue, capacity is an issue. Excuse me, we are on air, I beg. Are you saying, sir, that you can expand this thing to take care of Accra's full waste generation?
Yes, please. Kofi, let me explain.
Do you need government support?
Yes, please. Let me explain to you. This landfill was constructed with a bank loan by the private sector through Stanchart. We are even paying the debt as we speak now. And the private sector in developed countries, I've visited Japan, I've gone everywhere, and they are professionals here, they are development partners here. The private sector don't get into high investment like this. But we took it upon ourselves that we must lead, we must support. This is our country. We have emotional part of this. So we did this. If government give us
How
support,
much was that?
this cost us about $40 million.
$40 million?
Yes. If government give us support to expand this, I'm telling you, look, this year,
Please,
last year.
sorry, I don't cut you. 3 years, you've had $1 billion. All right? So why can't we have 5 of these? So we are on solutions. Why can't we have 5 of these ones and just knock the problem off?
How many years have we had $3 billion?
Hey, he just put up the statistic that in 3 years,
All
we've
I'm
had $1
saying
billion.
We've only been in government 1 year.
Please, please.
Hold on.
Hold on.
We're talking about the nation.
Yes, but hold on. Hold on.
Please listen to me.
Okay, I'll get up. Hold on. Okay, his time.
Let me make the point very clear.
You sit down. Hold
It's
on.
important. Sit down.
I am moderating. Hold on.
No. Let me speak. Let me speak.
Let me ask the question.
Let me speak. The point simply is this. We have never had any attention on sanitation the way we're getting it now.
Where is the money?
All these issues have not been. I should ask all the other previous governments.
Okay,
No,
you
what's up?
let him finish.
One year.
You let him finish. You let him.
We are trying to streamline things.
Let him
We're trying to
finish.
ensure that the money goes where it should go.
Let him finish.
And it's a policy of government that we should not have any landfill site anymore. That's why I started with resource management. The value is in the resources that we should recycle and transform into compost or any other material that would be usable for us. So that's in consonance with what he's talking about.
You let him finish. The only
As a
point is
nation,
that
as a nation,
it's time.
whatever we've owed, let's look at the way forward. With the ministry leading the way, streamline the system, we get the right results. That's
Thank
all.
you. You know, if this costs $40 million, we should have 10 of them. Please go ahead.
So I humbly, the private sector is pleading serious government support. We cannot go and contract loans to do this. Now, after the recycling at the compost plant, you see, developed countries have developed a measure that, starting with sometimes initial segregation, has serious challenges. So all the waste can come to a plant where it can segregate them, and that's what we are doing. So when it comes to the plant, after the composting have been segregated, you have the plastics, metal, and everything, and then through this, you move into serious recycle. So nothing is called waste. You get the compost 61%, the other ones you are recycling them and converting, adding some just granules, you are able to get the dustbin. And this is what the private sector, it is here. ZOOMLION is the first company. This, we don't even have it in West Africa. You can't have this in, show me a country in West Africa that has a compost plant. It's only ZOOMLION. Who has done this? It's only ZOOMLION that have done this. And so the credit and the due and the support must be given to this company. Now, in the year 2007, when we are talking about dustbins, it is the only company who started free dustbin is ZOOMLION. In the year 2007, we started saying that get a dustbin free, and then so that the whole thing was that to bring a culture, waste is a culture. Once the dustbin is there, people will dispose into it. So we must enhance this and support this, and then depend.
Are you still doing this dustbin thing?
Pardon, please?
The dustbin?
Yes, we are doing
still doing it?
Yes, we are doing it.
Okay, please
and
go
then we also produce the inner liners. All these factories are here. The factories are existing. The factories are working. We have number of workers working with them. They are all here. Now we have a new compost plant we are constructing in Kumasi, and Kofi, ladies and gentlemen, it's a waste environmental park. You have weighing bridge. You have so many things there to convert the waste into other valuable things. This is and this is 100% private funding, contracting loans, and doing this with the necessary support of government. We will get far. The private sector is putting up the infrastructure, and then government will the necessary resources and support will get there. In other countries, government does this himself. In Ghana, with the private sector has done it himself. We are talking about liquid waste. The liquid waste issue which we're talking about on the policy, page 36 is there. When you look at this, you see how the liquid waste issue that was at Lavender Hill. It was a 100-year problem. Through the support and the needed arrangement of government, ZOOMLION and its partners have solved the problem. So in terms of the strategy failing, I would say that the private sector has put in certain measures so that it doesn't fail. There might be some challenges, but the impact of the private sector have done it well. And then you have industrial waste. This is what we have done. You have other drainage system, the flooding that the mayor spoke about. You could see that we came in as a private. We brought dredging machine. It is dredging. That is why we have so many downpour, but still, no kind of flooding have ever happened since 2015. The private sector, the expert members are doing this. ZOOMLION is a multinational. We are working in other countries. We are in Angola, we are in Guinea. We go for tender, we do integrity work there. It is not about the company taking advantage of issues here. We were yearning to be a multinational from the 2006, and we are there. We are in other countries. We are consulting for companies in Nigeria and other countries. These are operations in other countries, Angola, Sierra Leone, and you can see them there. I'll give you the solutions, please.
Time.
Enforcement and other things, non-payments. Now, please, Kofi, and all in Ghana, worldwide, this is from World Bank report. The collection of waste, high-income countries should charge 85 to 250. Low middle income charge 20 to 50. That is the rate and the price that if you want to have value for money. In Ghana, it is 18.6. On the landfill at Tema that we are managing, it should have been $15 to $40 per ton. We are charging 4.2. We are saving this country because we love this country.
Okay.
On the composting, it should be $10 to $40. That is this is the World Bank prices.
Okay, because of
we are charging $80.
Sorry. Okay, so please stay around.
I'll just finish that. The waste bin is listen, let's have the waste bins distributed everywhere.
Good.
Let us also support the private sector very well. They are doing very well.
Good.
And then we'll get all the solutions that we
Good.
need. Thank you very much.
Good. We have a few comments that will be made, okay? But I just want to lay this rule. We don't intend this to be a tussle between any two people, okay? So I'm going to moderate this section very well. Manasseh has some questions, and I think it's proper that we ask them, okay? So please go ahead and ask your question.
Yes, I just want to clarify from Mr. Japon. He made mention of the fact that the compost plant was a private sector. They took loans to, but I'm also aware the government pays the company every month, and this money comes from the District Assembly's Common Fund. May I know how much your company receives in respect of this compost plant every month, and also the Lavender Hill? Do you take money from the government every month? And if yes, how much and what for?
Okay. In the waste, thank you very much, Manasseh, for this question. One thing that we must all understand, very simple, is that the waste cycle worldwide, the treatment facilities are being constructed either in public-private partnership with government or government, and you pay for the waste per tonnage of the treatments of the waste there. It's where that you can go to UK, you can everywhere. That is the practice. You carry your waste and it goes to the plant, it's being treated. So we entered into an agreement with government for the treatment of the waste at the compost plant and the treatment of the Lavender Hill, the liquid waste. Government even constructed one and they were paying for the service of it. So the practice is that you treat the waste at the treatment plant and government pay for it. We entered into the arrangement with tonnage and the liquid waste to per metric ton of the liquid waste that comes there. And I don't have the figures offhand, but that is the arrangement worldwide, and that's the practice.
Let me clarify. So you built the facility with your money?
Yes, I just read from the policy that you can go in bid, operate, transfer, or bid and operate.
So I'm trying to clarify. By the way, for the first time in my life, Lavender Hill, that is the place near the beach over there. For the first time in my life, you could pass there with your glass down. And kudos to you. So after everything is said, that was good. Now, is that a private facility?
It's a private facility.
You built with your money?
We built with our money.
But government has to pay
for the service.
Plus, other people also have to pay for the
That's
service.
Correct.
And
no, it is the treatment that now the trucks go and discharge from the houses and take it to the plant.
Manasseh wanted to know, is this the same thing?
We don't collect fee.
Let's simplify this matter. How many dustbins were procured? 1 million is what we have on record. How were those dustbins procured? Who was supposed to pay them? Was it clear on the purchase agreement that it was going to be given to government for 2 years before they pay thereafter? If they're going to pay after 2 years, was it free?
I understand all that. I understand all that. But yes. You know what? This is what I want us to
We need dustbins. Nobody's questioning.
I hear you, and we have a
How
million.
How is being procured,
Mr.
where
Minister,
it goes. This is what is
I think I'm helping you. Those are things we should deal with, and some of them are under criminal investigation. What I want is that this 1 million there, if this man can commit to us now, that despite whatever is going on, okay, let's have these dustbins distributed, and let's get them working. Whilst we deal with it, let him make the public pronouncement now. Let's work it out in the back.
Free or to be paid by government. Let's be very clear about that.
Please.
What?
Yes. I can produce even 2 million of dustbins.
No, the ones there now.
I can give it and give the government 2 years to pay.
Hold on.
And you see, let me tell you.
Okay.
Please, let me explain to you something.
I beg these dustbins right now.
I beg you.
You will give us 2 years to pay.
I will give you 2 years to pay.
Will you take it?
It depends on what price.
At what price?
What price?
Let me give you, please. I beg you. Let me. Please. Let us have a clarity here. The dustbins was $60. Please listen. The dustbins was $60. The transportation in dollars, when you even multiply, it's about 270.
Please, I beg.
Wait. The contract that was signed, and it's on record, everybody can check it. You were transporting, you see, it comes with the innovation of what we wanted to be a problem solver, not just selling dustbins. So you produce the dustbins from Accra, distribute it to Boliga, distribute to Tamale, get into the houses. So we have ZOOMLION and its partners have even developed a digitized housing system that will give you the dustbin. It is RFID tagged. So we can identify that we gave you the dustbin, because when 2007 we distributed the dustbins, people were just using it for holding other things. So now we are tagging it with RFID. Look at the cost. We are even transporting. So the dustbin doesn't go to the districts, and the district don't have warehouses. ZOOMLION was going to distribute the dustbins into houses. Contract people to do that. Look at the cost of it and give you 2 years to pay. Calculate it and see whether $60 merited. But because we want to solve a problem, that is why we're doing that.
No, mine is not a question, just a contribution. I must admit the dustbin concept is not a bad thing. To get households to have dustbins, I'm never against it. Okay. But in all of this, I mentioned one thing, that what we have seen, very impressive. But how transparent is the process?
Well, that depends on the minister.
And that is the problem. No, it depends on all of us as Ghanaians. The private sector those in the public sector. He talked about the fact that he's done all of this. And the reason I asked the question is that I have a spreadsheet in front of me. And from June 2016 to September 2017, the state paid 36.5 million cedis through Common Fund to the Accra Compost site. And within the same period too, we paid almost 90 million Ghana cedis for the sewage systems Ghana Limited, the construction and management of liquid and medical waste project.
Was it not for the use of the facility?
Yes. So within a little over 1 year, about 90 million Ghana cedis. So the question is, if we are made to believe that this is a private sector thing, we took loans and did everything, but behind the scenes, the state is paying so much money.
Is it just for the use of the thing?
No. Just that's what I wanted to know.
Please, Peace. Yeah, go ahead. Time.
That is what I wanted to know. Full disclosure. How much is the state paying per month for the service? And
okay,
is
I
there
get
value
you,
for
but
money?
because that detail maybe.
So if we go out there, I think it is not honest to let the whole public know. Until I ask this question, how many of us would have known that the state is paying this much?
Okay, good.
So that's why the question, the intervention is not wrong, but behind the intervention, what goes on
I hear you.
is a problem.
Now, this is what I'm going
to
do.
So if we claim that it's not important, then I don't think it's even worth it discussing these things.
No,
because in my view, corruption is the main issue.
I hear you. Assuming government doesn't help you, I've seen what you've just shown us. Is it possible, if for instance, and I'll come to you to confirm this, if there's private payment is households pay for the refuse disposal, can you collect it and can you find the financing to do more of these things and just let government pay for the use of it?
Kofi, thank you very much. In fact, our guest speaker made a statement about the government's investment into waste management. They say that's about 0.01 something to our GDP. Let's look at other countries that have set up sanitation or environmental management as priority. They spend 1%. Others even go to...
Without government support, can you do it?
So what we are saying, we can do it. We can raise the funds, but we'll still need some payment at the treatment plants from government.
Mr. Minister, he says he and ESPA can provide all the capacity. Do you believe him?
We need to support them to be able to provide the capacity. And we are prepared to do that.
You are prepared to support them to provide?
It's part of our strategic plan.
We will see whether maybe Imani's president will agree for us to come back.
I think that we should not reduce this discourse to ZOOMLION. This is a very important forum, and in this room, I have seen a lot of experts in the industry who are present here. They are listening to us. We want clear solutions as to the way forward. So as much as practicable, humbly submit that let us broaden the discussion so that we can have it.
Okay, this is where on the program, we have comments from Mr. Kwabena Japan, who is an engineer, and then we'll get to the people. I've noted all of you, so I'll come to you. So.
Well, thank you, Kofi. I find it very interesting that we can speak for over 2 hours and very little talk about the technical aspects of waste management. Because we all recognize and we know that landfilling is not sustainable. I'm happy that the minister is saying that the policy is to stop it. There is no mention of the waste hierarchy model, the fact that we need to do something about how we handle waste at the household level. That is very critical. And in any case, Accra is predicted to produce by 2025 4,000 metric tons of waste. So now Pong is almost dead. Is compost the way forward? I think it is the way. Is it the only option? Is it the only option? There are newer technologies. If you look at the literature on research in this area, it's all done from the social science perspective. Funding arrangements, we're talking about cash. What about the technological advancements that we've seen in the developed world? So those are the areas I think we should focus right now. I mean, technologies like anaerobic digestion, and you know that it can be a source of secondary power production for this country, whilst dealing with the biodegradable fraction of our solid waste. So I think it's important that we focus a lot more. I mean, he has shown waste, this is the waste hierarchy model. You can see the prevention and the minimization of waste, and so that we can build something for the future that is sustainable. I think ZOOMLION, what we have seen so far is on the right track, but I don't believe that composting alone is the answer, because Ghana's experience with composting in the past has been largely unsuccessful. But there are new measures. Pyrolysis is there. Plasma gasification is there. Anaerobic digestion is there. So that's where the technical knowledge is required so that we can do this. But let's go down to basics. I do believe that the ministry should launch a major public education policy for Ghanaians about how we handle waste at the household level. At the household level. And we can use simple sorting and separation mechanisms. Just separate it into two streams, the wet stream and the dry stream. That will reduce the cost to the waste collectors, because for the inorganic waste, you can leave it there for 2-3 weeks without collection, and it will not cause the smell that Mr. Japon talks about. The biodegradable waste, that one you need a frequency of collection. That should be able to do it. And the biodegradable waste, you can use all of it, most of it. I mean, why should we allow the traders at Abogloshi to just sweep the waste and the tomatoes together? They shouldn't. We should go and educate them so that they treat that separately. Food waste is 79% of the organic waste in that 61%. And so that is where we should be heading towards. That's my little thing I can tell you. Thank you very much.
Fantastic point. Selom, please make a note of that. I think this is where NCC and co have to come in.
My name is Paul Adom-Otchere. I'm a news reporter, and I'd like to agree from the journalistic perspective with a lot of things Manasseh said, especially the issues he raised about transparency and the issues he raised about corruption. I think that on corruption, we are doing sufficiently well. The CID is looking at it. The transparency issue he raised is very important. My small departure from Manasseh is the fixation on deconstructing a monopoly. Not all monopolies happen on their own. Not all monopolies are orchestrated. Some monopolies happen on their own because of the weight that they deliver. McDonald's was a monopoly for a long time. Microsoft was a monopoly. Facebook is a monopoly. In this country, MTN has become a monopoly. So if we're looking at the sanitation problem from that angle, we have to look at the monopoly and see what we can do with it. In Nigeria, Dangote is a monopoly, sugar, rice, everything, and he's coming into this country. Unless we create these behemoths that we can manage, and we have to be able to manage them, our country is not going anywhere. If a monopoly comes up, say, pull the monopoly down, let's divide it, it doesn't work. And it didn't work with ZOOMLION in 2009. It didn't work.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean,
so I think that we have to look at that and see what we can do to encourage the monopolies to create that behemoth that our country can ride on.
Your point is made, so I think you can rest. But I think the important thing is that this monopoly must be someone or some monopoly we manage and is working for our benefit. That's the point.
Okay, so thanks very much.
Israel's number 2, ladies number 3. Israel.
All right, so I think we've eloquently misdiagnosed our problems over the years.
So solution?
Simple. The solution, beyond breaking the monopoly, is to look at the big, fat, ugly elephant in the room, which is the way we practice our politics. That is the problem. The monopoly we have today is because of the inefficiencies of our institutions to open the tenders, make them merit-based. If we don't fix our meritocracy in this country, we will continue having fora like this every week.
I agree with you, and the comment on that is what our fellow just said, that, look, we should stop this communal cleaning. We have enough laborers to clean, and people who have to manage them, if they can't do the work, we keep firing them. So we all don't have to go and clean streets. You are next.
Yes. Mama Lou, that's what I go by, and that's what you can call me. Every poo deserves a loo, so toilet sanitation is what I talk about. In the whole mix of this, solution number 1, do not have another forum on sanitation without including women on the panel. You cannot address sanitation when half the population is not sitting on the panel. Solution number 2, separation by source. We have, and Kwabena has mentioned, that we can build energy plants with just the organic waste as energy. So I'm looking at pyrolysis, I'm looking at combustion, I'm looking at this going within a year because AXA, Turkish company, came in and built a thermal plant within a year, and it's fully operational at 380 megawatts of energy to this country. Our shit can produce energy. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I just think that with all the plans and the technical things that are being talked about, my interest is in making sure that people are educated from infancy. That's all. I just want to be practical. Infancy. If children understand that they do not litter, they grow up with it. Is that okay with you? Thank you very much.
My name is Francis Abergo. I have two concerns to raise. One to my senior brother, Honorable Ada, and then another to my younger brother, Manasseh. Honorable, I see you have a resolve to take the YEA sweepers management to the assemblies. I just want to caution that you may do it successfully, but the assemblies may disappoint you. If you doubt me, just check the Auditor General's report. They always do not do good in financial management. Thank you. With my younger brother, Manasseh, I like him so much because he is one of the greatest people from our region, Upper East. And so I follow him all the time. Whatever he writes, I read. There's one thing that people say a lot about him in the Upper East region. Manasseh, you have written so much. We like the way you try to check corruption. You have written so much about waste management companies, especially the Jospon Group. When will you write about their good side so that we can know what good they do against the bad side? Thank you.
Hello, my name is David Sam, and I represent the Clean Ghana Army, a sanitation-based NGO. What we feel is that the sanitation problem in Ghana now, it has got to a point that the media must embrace this fight and attack it like how they attack the Galamsey menace. Just as we have media coalition on Galamsey, we should have something like media coalition on sanitation, whereby they will make so much noise for people to know that it's time they change their attitude.
Right.
Actually, if they are to change their attitude and they do not litter around just as is being done now, the problem will be 70% solved. Good. We also have the policymakers. They have to implement the sanitation laws. Let's just get people, put them before the courts and let them pay fines and things. We shouldn't just mention it at summits like this. Right from here, the laws must be implemented. Also, the attitudinal change. Let's, as people have also mentioned, going to the schools from the basic level. We can even get GES to put it into the curricula of the students, that they will be trained on how to practice good sanitation measures. And also now in Ghana, yeah, people revere their pastors even more than the president and the ministers. So let's get the pastors, they should always preach, when they mount their podium, they should preach on good sanitation, and Ghanaians will embrace it.
Answer, please, your final remarks.
Thank you very much. I have a few concluding remarks to make. And listening through all the presentation, I realized that the private sector is responsible for 90%. And from what we know, the private sector has been given a lot of support so far. So it should be part of the problem. And if it's part of the problem, it can be part of the solution. So going forward, I would want the ministry, the assemblies, or whoever is in charge to monitor. Now, the contracts in the sanitation sector are like fixed. It is not performance-based. The contract is fixed. At the end of the month, somebody is supposed to take some amount of money. And when that is done and there's no supervision, the work doesn't get done. I would also want to respond to someone who is asking when I would tell the positive side. I must say I'm a journalist and I am very critical of the things I write. And there's a misconception out there. I really do not care so much because I know what I do and why I do it. If you see me from Monday to Sunday, you see me in African print. I took this decision in 2011. I used to wear ties and the rest. I gave all to my brothers, and I said, if I take my money and buy a material and let someone source it here, I'm investing in the local economy. I'm giving someone a job. So I will not be happy for a local sanitation company to be overlooked for another company from China or India to come and take that job. That's my principle. I would also not just want to sing praises until I've looked at the whole issue critically. So as journalists, we are trained to be very critical, and just something came up here. Seeing the presentation is very impressive. Lavender Hill, we all complained. But that is not to say we should also not question the cost it comes to the state. When we sat here, the mayor is convinced that the compost plant processes 200 tons, and the manager is saying they do 600. It is very difficult to get any independent confirmation. So my point is, we should make it a point to tie all these contracts to performances. We can support the private sector in whatever way we have to do. But the current arrangement, it is in the interest of the private sector players that the system is streamlined, that there's transparency. From the way things are now, I don't see the private sector being sustainable. If we allow these arrangements to stand, we should get to a point that without the government, they can still stand on their feet and work. And that cannot happen if we want to try to cover up and a few things. We don't know how much we are paying for the compost plant. We don't know how much we are paying for Lavender Hill. But I know the answer is here. Bring it out. Let's all interrogate it. And at the end of the day, we all go out informed. That's all that some of us have been asking. We should have value for money. When that happens, our country will be clean, people will be paid well for the services, and we'll all be happy.
Right. Thank you. What I humbly want to say is that we are all Ghanaians. We love our country. We have emotional attached to anything. And that is why this forum is more concerned to everyone that, look, sanitation is an issue. Let's try how possible is to solve it. The President, Nana Akufo-Addo, made a statement that when we have a problem in this country, our first reflex is to look for a Ghanaian solution. The private sector in this country has done a lot to the service of this nation, sacrificing, supporting, and developing. And I think that when you compare the support that the private sector gets compared to foreign companies, it's very minimal. The encouragement and support over the years, foreign companies get sovereign guarantees, raise funds, so many things. Foreign companies don't get, local companies don't get that. So whatever they have done to certain level, they must be encouraged, they must be supported, they must move ahead. And I think that's how Americans build America. Germans build Germany. So Ghanaians will build Ghana when we support and give them the encouragement. What I have recognized, and it's my candid opinion, whenever there's any change of government, the private companies suffer politicization, victimization, and on encouragement to move ahead. This must stop. This country cannot move forward with that kind of ideas. What I'll humbly say is that ZOOMLION and its partners, the private companies, have invested a lot in this country. After all, wherever we got, we invested in this country. The other companies that comes here take the money back. And so this is what I humbly want to say, that we must look at it. Whatever we have done in the sector of sanitation, we did it for this country, not our own personal. Nobody built a compost plant or transfer station or a dustbin plant to produce the dustbin for himself and his family. It is for the nation. So whatever has been done must be looked at it and see how best it will be useful for this nation, so that Ghana, as a united country, can move forward. That is the private sector's passion. That is entrepreneurs. As for we entrepreneurs, we innovate, we create, and we look at other opportunities and see how best to solve problems. On ZOOMLION, I'll humbly say that if it's a company that is of corruption, you could have the law courts are there, everything. The JIDA report, we are all ready. It is in the it is very clear on the internet. Has ZOOMLION been charged? Is it corruption? As for perception, it's everybody's opinion. You can have perception about a company, but the reality talks much. Has the company been charged? Has he been arrested? This issue also is for clarity. Everybody must look at this and look at it. I would say that the contract that we have with the YE is a public document. And Honorable Minister signed the first contract. I brought it here. It is for we to pay the workers. It is not as the workers going to pay through YE. The contract is here, 2006. He signed it. It is here. The same thing, and when we finish, come and take it and read it louder. Kofi, I can give it to you. Whether it was supposed to go to, we paid on saying, sometimes when he says that it should get back, as if he did something different and it's a change. What he did is here. Read the responsibilities and everything. It is here, clear. So I want things to be very, very clear that we have not done anything. We have done a very good service to this nation, and the private sector needs to be encouraged, need to be supported. We have worked sometime 2 years, we are not being paid. When we are not paid, nobody talks about it. When we are in debt, nobody talks about it. When we are doing things for nation and supporting, nobody talks about it. The dredging, 2 years, we have not been paid, nobody talks about it. I think that the private sector, we are creating jobs. We are involving people. We are developing this nation. Let us support them. Let us develop them. And I think we can get far. I think that this sanitation, we have invested a lot. We are ready to solve it, and it will be solved. Thank you very much.